There was once upon a time a little farmer and his wife living near Coolgarrow. They had 3 children, and my story happened while the youngest was still a baby. The wife was a good enough wife, but her mind was all on the family and her farm, and she hardly ever went to her knees without falling asleep, and she thought the time spent in the chapel was twice as long as it needed to be. So she let her husband and children go to Mass before her, while she called to consult a fairy man about a disorder one of her cows was suffering from. She was late to chapel, and she was sorry all the day after, for her husband was in great grief about it, and she was very fond of him. Late that night he was awakened by the cries of his children calling out, "Mother, mother!" When he sat up and rubbed his eyes, there was no wife by his side. And when he asked the little ones where their mother was, they said they saw a room full of nice little men and women, dressed in white and red and green, and their mother was in the middle of them, and they were going out of the door as if she were walking in her sleep. Out he ran, and he searched everywhere around the house, but neither tale nor tidings could he get of her for many a day. Well, the poor man was miserable, for he was as fond of the woman as she had been of him. It used to bring tears to his cheeks to see his poor children neglected and dirty, as now they often were, and they'd be bad enough only for a kind neighbor that used to look in whenever she got the time. The infant was away with a nurse. About 6 weeks later, just as he was going out to work one morning, a neighbor who used to mind women when they were ill came up to him and kept step by step with him to the field, and this is what she told him. "Just as I was falling asleep last night, I heard a horse's tramp on the grass and a knock at the door, and there, when I came out, was a fine-looking dark man, mounted on a black horse, and he told me to get ready all in a haste, for a lady was in great want of me. As soon as I put on my cloak and things, he took me by the hand, and I was sitting behind him before I felt myself stirring. 'Where are we going, sir?' said I. 'You'll soon know,' said he, and he drew his fingers across my eyes, and not a ray of light could I see. I kept a tight grip on him, and I little knew whether we were going forward or backwards, or how long we were going, till my hand was taken again and I felt the ground beneath me. The fingers went the other way across my eyes, and then there we were, before a castle door, and in we went through a big hall with great rooms, all painted a fine green color, with red and gold and bands and ornaments, and the finest ladies and gentlemen walking all about. At last we came to a bedroom, with a beautiful lady in bed and a fine bouncing boy beside her. The lady clapped her hands, and in came the dark man and kissed her and the baby and praised me and gave me a bottle of green ointment to rub the child all over. Well, the child I rubbed, sure enough, but my right eye began to hurt, and I put up my finger and gave it a rub, and then I stared, for never in all my life was I so frightened. The beautiful room was a big rough cave, with water oozing in the edges, through the stones and through the clay, and the lady and the lord and the child, they were poverty-stricken creatures, nothing but skin and bones, and the rich dresses were nothing but old rags. I didn't let on that I found out any difference, and after a bit said the dark man, 'Go before me to the hall door, and I will be with you in a few moments. I will see you safe home.' Well, just as I turned into the outside cave, who should I see by the outside door but poor Molly. She looked round terrified, and she said to me in a whisper, 'I've been brought here to nurse the child of the king and the queen of the fairies, but there is a chance of saving me. All the court will cross the pass near Temple Shambo next Friday night on a visit to the fairies to old Ross. If John can catch me by the hand or cloak as I ride by, and he has the courage to not let go, I will be safe. Here comes the king. Don't open your mouth to answer. I saw what happened with the ointment." The dark man didn't once cast his eyes towards Molly, and he seemed to have no suspicion of me. When we came out, I looked about me, and where do you think we were but by the dike? I was on the horse again, which was nothing but a big ragweed, and I was in dread every minute that I would fall off, but nothing happened till I found myself in my own cabin again. The king slipped 5 guineas into my hand as soon as I was on the ground. He thanked me, bade me good night, and left. I hope I'll never see his face again. I got into my bed, and I couldn't sleep for a long time, and when I examined the 5 guineas the next morning that I had left in the table drawer, I found 5 withered leaves of oak. Bad luck to the giver. Well, you may well imagine all the fright and joy and grief the poor man was in while the woman told her story. They talked and talked and talked, but we needn't mind what they said until Friday night came, when both were standing where the mountain road crosses the one going to Ross. There they stood, looking over the bridge of Thor in the dead of the night, with a little moonlight shining from above. At last she gave a start, and she said, "By this and by that, here they come, bridles jingling and feathers tossing." He looked, but he could see nothing, and she stood trembling, and her eyes were wide open, looking down the way to the fords. "I see your wife," she said, "riding on the outside just so much as to rub against us. We'll walk on quietly, just as if we suspect nothing, and when we are passing, I'll give you a shove." While they walked on easily, their poor hearts were beating in their breasts, and though he could see nothing, he heard a faint jingle and trampling and rustling, and at last he got the push that she had promised. He spread out his arms, and there was his wife's waist within them, and he could see her plain. But such a hullabaloo rose as if there was an earthquake, and he found himself surrounded by horrible-looking things, roaring at him and striving to pull his wife away. But he made the sign of the cross, and he bid them be gone in the name of God, and he held his wife as if it were iron his arms were made of. But in one moment everything was suddenly as silent as the grave, and the poor woman was lying in a faint in the arms of her husband and her good neighbor. Well, all in good time she was minding her family and her business again, and I'll go bail, after the fright that she got, she spent a little more time on her knees, and avoided fairy men all the days of the week, and particularly on Sunday. It is hard to have anything to do with the good people without getting a mark from them. My brave nurse didn't escape no more than any other. She was one Thursday at the market, when who did she see walking around the tubs of butter but the dark man, very hungry looking, and taking a scoop out of one tub and then out of another. "Oh, sir," said she, very foolish, "I hope your lady is well, and the baby." "Pretty well, thank you," says he, rather frightened like. "How do I look in this new suit?" said he, getting to one side of her. "I can't see you plain at all," she said. "How about now?" said he, getting around back to the other side. "Oh, indeed, sir, your coat looks no better than a withered dock leaf." "Maybe then," said he, "it'll be different now," and he struck the eye next him with a switch. Friends, she never saw a glimmer again with that eye until the day of her death.